Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really fundamental for how organizations work securely and, well, just work. Organizational policies.
That's right.
And for you, the learner, you want to get the key info quickly without drowning in jargon, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack the main types of policies you'll encounter.
Yeah, we'll look at why they matter in any modern workplace. We've got some good material focusing on key areas, how we use tech, protect data, handle disruptions, that sort of thing.
Basically, the stuff that keeps things running smoothly and safely.
Exactly. These aren't just like dusty documents. They really shape how a company operates day to day and protects itself.
Okay, good. So where should we start? Maybe with something most people have seen, an AUP.
Yeah, the acceptable use policy. That's a great starting point.
So what's the core idea there?
Well, basically an AUT, it sets the ground rules for using the company's network, computers, systems,
Yeah.
all that.
It draws the line on what's okay and what's not.
Precisely. It's about defining acceptable digital behavior at work. Ultimately, it's not just a list of don'ts. It reflects how much risk the organization is comfortable with and how serious they are about protecting their digital stuff and reputation.
Right. So what kind of things does it typically cover? Like specific examples?
Okay, think about your everyday online activity. An AUP will usually talk about acceptable web browsing.
Which sites are okay, which aren't?
Yeah. And appropriate content, what you can look at or share on the company network. Downloading software is another big one.
Yeah, that could be risky.
Definitely. And also how you handle sensitive company information. That's often in there too.
Makes sense. It's about being a responsible digital citizen within the company.
Okay.
So broadening out from that, information security policies, how are they different?
Well, the AUP is very user-focused, right? How you behave. Information security policies are broader. Their main aim is ensuring everyone using IT systems follows the rules designed to protect the information itself.
So confidentiality, integrity, availability, that stuff.
Exactly. It's about the security of all information stored or processed by the organization. So it shifts from just user actions to the bigger picture of keeping data safe.
Got it. Okay, next one sounds a bit more specific. SDLC policies. What's SDLC?
SDLC is the software development lifecycle.
Ah,
So these policies are specifically about how software gets developed inside the organization. They set up secure, efficient ways to build and maintain the company's own software.
right. So this is for the developers, the people actually writing code for the company, not just regular employees using Word or email.
Exactly right. That's a key distinction. It's about the creation process.
Okay. Now, change management policies. This sounds like an area where things could easily go wrong if you don't have rules.
Oh, absolutely. Change is constant in IT, isn't it?
Tell me about it. So how do these policies bring order to that?
Well, change management policies basically govern the whole process, requesting a change, reviewing it, getting approval, and then actually implementing it on IT systems or software.
So it's like a structured workflow for updates?
Yeah, think of it as a controlled, documented way to introduce anything new or modified. And it's not just about stopping things from breaking, although that's key. A good process can actually help the company innovate faster, believe it or not.
How so?
By having a framework for controlled changes, even for experiments, you learn from what happens, even if it doesn't go perfectly. It can make the organization more agile.
Okay, but why is it so critical to have that formal process? Can't IT just, make changes when needed?
Well, the risk is that even a small change, if not properly managed, could accidentally open up a security hole,
Right.
or knock out a critical service, or even make the company non-compliant with regulations.
And you mentioned things not always going to plan.
Exactly. So these policies also have to cover how you roll back a change if it causes problems. You need an exit strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. Who's typically involved in this process? The stakeholders.
Yeah, we call them stakeholders. It's usually a mix. You've got the IT folks with the technical know-how,
Sure.
business leaders who understand how it impacts operations, and often compliance officers who look at the legal and regulatory side. Everyone brings a different, crucial perspective.
So it's really a team effort to manage change safely. What about when changes happen? Timing must be important.
Oh, absolutely. Policies often state changes should happen during off-peak hours, to minimize disruption.
Makes sense. Late at night or weekends?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
But you also have to respect pre-agreed maintenance windows for things like reboots. And it's a good point to remember that after work in one place might be prime time somewhere else if you're global.
Yeah, time zones. Good point. And keeping track of all these changes, documentation.
Absolutely vital. Good policies require detailed records. Usually changes to code are tracked in repositories, and system architecture changes in diagrams.
Why is that so important?
Well, imagine trying to fix a complex engine without a manual or diagram. It's much harder, right? This documentation lets you revert if needed, and it helps everyone understand how things work later on.
So it's for troubleshooting and future reference, too.
Exactly. Now, obviously, you don't track everything. Sending a routine fax probably doesn't need a formal change management entry.
Right. Okay. So what are the core steps in managing a change, then?
There are a few key parts. First, impact analysis, really thinking through what a change might affect across different systems and business processes.
Okay.
Then, testing. You have to test the change in a separate environment, like a sandbox, before it goes live.
Make sure it actually works and doesn't break anything else.
Exactly. And crucially, you need a backup plan. Step-by-step instructions on how to undo the change and get back to the previous state if things go wrong during implementation. It's your safety net.
Planning, testing, safety net. Got it.
Right. And often, organizations use standard operating procedures, SOPs, to make sure everyone follows these steps consistently within the change management framework.
Okay. Now, you sometimes hear about older systems, legacy applications. Do they make change management harder?
They certainly can, yeah. Legacy systems often run on outdated technology, which creates challenges.
Like compatibility issues?
Exactly. They might not work well with modern updates or security patches. Sometimes trying to update them can even introduce new security problems if the patches don't install correctly or cause conflicts.
Tricky situation. Are there ways around that? How do you manage changes on those old systems?
Well, there are a couple of strategies. One is using something called fit gap software. It's basically custom code built to bridge the gap between the old system and newer ones.
Like an adapter?
Sort of, yeah. Another approach is emulation, using virtual machines to recreate the old system's environment so the legacy app can run on newer hardware.
Interesting. So you can kind of contain the old system.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears. What happens when someone leaves the company? Employee departures.
Right. That's another critical process governed by policy. Usually the very first step is HR deactivates the user's account. Typically, yes, or very quickly. And then the account is usually scheduled for automatic deletion after a certain period.
Okay. And what about company gear? Laptops, phones?
That's key too. The policy needs to ensure all company-owned devices are returned. Often there's an inventory sheet to track everything.
What if someone used their own phone or laptop for work stuff? BYOD.
Good question. In that case, the policy usually requires them to remove all company information, proprietary data, emails, that kind of thing, and any software the company paid for from their personal device.
Makes sense for data security and software licenses.
Exactly.
We've talked a lot about IT security, but what about, locking the doors? Physical security.
Absolutely. While we focus a lot on digital, physical security is just as important and needs its own policies and procedures. This includes tracking things like key cards, access badges, physical keys, controlling who can get into the buildings in specific areas.
So it complements the digital access controls.
Precisely. Deactivating an account stops digital access. Collecting a key card stops physical access.
Okay, let's talk about the data itself. Who actually owns it in an organization? Who's responsible?
Well, there are a few roles. The owner is typically a senior person, like a director or VP. They have the ultimate accountability for making sure that data is protected properly.
Okay, the buck stops with them. And what about controller and processor? We hear those terms a lot, especially with GDPR.
Right. The controller is key for privacy regs like GDPR. That's the entity, usually the organization itself, that decides why and how personal data is processed. They set the purpose and the means.
They're in charge of the decision-making.
Exactly. The processor is the one who actually does the processing, but they do it on behalf of the controller following their instructions. Cloud providers are common processors,
Right.
But it could also be other vendors or partners who handle data for the company.
Controller decides, processor acts. Got it. What about a custodian?
Okay, need to be careful here. There's a maintenance custodian that's like facility staff keeping the building maintained. But then there's a security governance custodian. That role is about the data itself, the safe handling, transport, storage of the data. They're responsible for the day-to-day protection according to the rules set by the owner and policies. Two very different things.
Okay. Building upkeep versus data caretaking. Clear. Now, big disruptions. What happens then? Business continuity, disaster recovery.
Exactly. So, the Continuity of Operations Plan, or COOP, that focuses on keeping the absolute critical business functions running during and immediately after a major disruption. Think natural disaster, power outage.
Keeping the lights on, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, ensuring the core mission continues. The Disaster Recovery Plan, or DR Plan, that's more about the step to recover everything after a catastrophe.
Yeah.
How do we get all IT systems and operations back to normal as quickly as possible?
So COPE is survival during, DR is full recovery after.
You got it. We figured out who looks after the data. Now we need plans for when things go really wrong, keeping data available and operations running.
Hopefully you never need the DR plan, but good to have it. What about specific security problems like a hack or a breach?
That's where your incident response policy comes in. This lays out exactly what to do when a security incident happens.
Like a playbook.
Exactly. Who to notify, how to contain the breach, how to investigate, how to recover. It's crucial for minimizing damage, meeting legal requirements, and maintaining trust. A good policy here can save a lot of headaches, fines, and reputation damage.
Okay, we've hit a lot of policy types. Now you also hear terms like standards and guidelines. How do they fit in with policies?
That's a really important distinction. A standard is a mandatory requirement. It defines the specific expected outcome or configuration. Like a standard might say, all production servers must use multi-factor authentication. It's non-negotiable. Following standards ensures consistency and a baseline level of security.
So it's the specific rule you have to follow to meet the policy's goal.
Right. And it's important to note, things like access control models tell you how access should work conceptually, and policies give the framework, but neither actually configures the server. The standard dictates that configuration detail. Think of standard as you absolutely must do this.
Okay, crystal clear.
Yep.
So what are guidelines then?
Guidelines are more like recommendations or best practices. They offer advice on how to do things well within a role or department, but they aren't usually strict mandatory rules like standards.
So suggestions, not commands.
Pretty much. They guide actions to help implement policies and standards effectively. Think of a guideline as it's recommended you encrypt your hard drive if you handle sensitive data. It's strong advice, maybe expected, but not enforced with the same rigidity as a standard.
Okay, so how do companies keep guidelines useful? Technology changes, threats change.
Yeah, that's key. They need regular review and updates. You have to check if they still make sense with current tech, current threats, business needs, best practices.
So periodic assessments.
Definitely. But just telling employees review the guidelines isn't enough to keep the guidelines themselves up to date. And you also don't want to update them constantly. People get overwhelmed. It's finding that balance, updating when there are significant shifts.
Makes sense. Now, thinking about large companies, sometimes security decisions are made centrally, sometimes more locally. Centralized versus decentralized governance.
Right. Imagine a big company spread across the country. Maybe they realize their single central security approach isn't quite working for specific local needs or risks.
Okay.
So centralized governance is when one core group makes pretty much all the major security decisions, policies, standards for the whole organization.
One size fits all, basically.
Often, yeah. Decentralized governance pushes some of that decision-making power out to different business units or regions. They can then tailor security measures a bit more to their specific local context.
Which sounds good, but are there downsides?
Well, yeah, you risk inconsistencies. Different parts of the company might end up with different security levels if there isn't strong central oversight ensuring baseline standards are met everywhere. Finding that balance is key.
Right. Consistency versus local flexibility. What about things like governance committees or data protection authorities?
Governance committees are usually groups of experts and stakeholders from across the company focused on specific areas, maybe risk, maybe compliance, maybe overall IT governance. They provide focused oversight. Data protection authorities are usually external, often governmental bodies, focused specifically on enforcing data privacy laws like GDPR.
Okay, different layers of oversight. Now,
Yeah.
automation, it's everywhere. How does that play into security policies?
Automation and scripting are, well, massive in security now. They can make things much more efficient and effective.
How so?
They can do repetitive tasks faster, more consistently than humans. Think about security monitoring automation makes it quicker, often more accurate, and potentially cheaper than having people watch logs all day. But just outsourcing security doesn't automatically solve your governance or change management needs. That can actually add complexity sometimes.
So automation isn't a magic fix, but a tool.
Exactly. A powerful tool when used right. Using automation tools that have security and compliance checks built in is a really good way to manage risk proactively.
I can speed things up.
Dramatically. Integrating automation with real-time monitoring can slash incident response times, detecting and containing a breach much faster.
What else is it good for?
Routine, high-volume tasks. Vulnerability scanning, deploying patches. Automation reduces the chance of human error in those critical but repetitive jobs. It can also help coordinate responses across different systems when a threat is detected. I remember hearing about a case where automation spotted an issue and contained it in minutes manually. That might have taken hours.
Wow, that's a huge difference. Any pitfalls to watch out for?
Oh, definitely. You can't just deploy scripts without testing them thoroughly first in a safe environment. That can cause chaos. And it's crucial to remember, automation augments human experts. It doesn't replace them. You still need people for complex situations, for judgment calls, for verifying the automation is working correctly.
So it handles the noise, maybe, but not the complex signals.
That's a good way to put it. It helps manage the flood of alerts more efficiently, but it doesn't make the threats themselves simpler or necessarily reduce the number of potential issues.
Okay. What are some best practices then for using automation securely?
Well, thinking about threats before you implement is key threat modeling your automation systems.
Makes sense.
And understanding the underlying policies first. Don't just turn on automation features from a vendor without checking. They fit your specific needs and rules. Integration is also important, making sure automation works smoothly with your existing security tools.
Are there things automation isn't good for?
Yeah, probably. Like face-to-face security awareness training. Automation can't really replicate that human interaction effectively. The real win is freeing up your skilled security people from the mundane stuff.
So they can focus on the harder problems.
Exactly. Analyzing complex threats, investigating anomalies, automation flags, strategic thinking. That's where humans excel.
This has been really insightful. We've covered a lot of ground on these organizational policies. It's clear they're much more than just rules on paper.
Absolutely. They're really a dynamic framework, constantly needing attention, but they're essential for security, compliance, and just making sure the organization runs effectively.
And you really see how they all connect, don't you? From the EEP guiding daily clicks to the DR plan for major disasters.
Yeah, it's all part of the same ecosystem of governance and protection. Understanding these different pieces gives you, the learner, a much better lens for viewing how your own organization works, no matter what your job is.
It definitely provides that solid grasp we talked about at the start.
Hopefully, yeah.
So to wrap up, maybe a thought for you to take away, thinking about your own workplace, which of these policy areas we discussed seems most critical right now? And perhaps, what questions do you have now about how those policies are actually working in practice? Definitely something worth pondering.